Ship's log, celestial date 218.246.01. We've come out of the drift on our way to Mira, and we've started getting a distress signal from a planet that I haven't heard of before, apparently called Nyx, and there is a settlement named Elysium, and they're sending us a Mayday. And even though we're in a bit of a rush, I don't think we can just leave these folks to their fate. They say that their orbital habitat has suffered catastrophic damage and they need our help. Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is Starforged Alpha Cluster. We are with Krista Sutton, our main character, also known as Jackpot, and her friend Mainframe. And last session, we escaped from Farpoint Station, which was the base of the Shattered Federation. We managed to find a relic that looks like a banner or a standard, a military standard with some weird writing on it, partly tattered. It's very fragile. It's now in the research lab or the technical lab of the Storm Swept in a locker. And we also have a symbiote in the medical lab hooked up to a small containment field that we're going to try to bring um, to Arnav on the planet on the settlement of Rek. But when we came out of we sort of flew away from Farpoint and we went to the White Dwarf system, Alpha Omega, where we had left our frenemy Shelton. Brennan Shelton, and his ship was disabled. Well, when we got there, it was gone. So Krista decided not to risk going through this drift to Dead Rock because Shelton knows that she's been flying along this drift passage and he might be setting a trap for her or whatever. So she forged her own path toward Mira. But on the way there, we got into a gravitational disturbance, and then we ended up in a system called the Nyx system, and we have this settlement named Elysium that has about 19 people. I just randomly rolled 48, I think, to see how many few was. Has received significant structural damage, is near a precursor vault on the surface. They are asking for help, and their technology has been sabotaged and probably by the precursor vault. And their project is they're trying to terraform this ice world of Nyx. So what I suspect may be happening is their attempt to terraform Nyx has awakened a precursor thing that is maybe here to defend or whatever the planet. It was maybe under the ice. I feel like this is the movie The Thing. It was maybe under the ice, and their attempts to melt and terraform the ice in that section woke this thing up. So, what is this vault like? Well, let's close this. This vault, I randomly rolled, and I left the rolls up here for you to peruse, that it is in fact planet-side. It was my first guess, but it was in fact planet-size. It is a large, elaborate site in a machine form, so it is some kind of a large machine, maybe even a mobile vault that can walk around the planet, maybe like a huge giant Imperial Walker or something. It has a practical or functional shape, but I don't know what the purpose of it is, so I'm not sure what the functional shape will be. We're going to have to do some rolls to see it's made of smooth metal. And then here is the roll that we had, and I renamed one of her this stopping the gamma ray. We know that's the gamma ray. It used to say space entity. I figured we could give it the real name. So we're on our way to Mira. We still need to get there, but because we've got this trouble, which came from, I believe, a weak hit on the last move, we're going to have to figure out exactly what Krista's going to do. And I have an idea. We have enough XP to buy an asset. So I have an idea what asset she's going to buy, and there won't be any compel moves or anything to do this because we're spending XP, so she's automatically going to get it. But first, we've got to get to Elysium and see what the situation is. So let's close the vault for now here. And so Krista turns the ship, she says, look, the E-drive has to spin down for a few hours anyway. Let's go see what the trouble is. And so she she turns the ship toward Elysium and flies toward it. And again, it's this a ring shape. Again, in the shape of, if you think about Star Wars Episode 1, the Trade Federation, think of that ring without the central sphere, just the ring, the donut that's like slightly incomplete. There's a little slice taken out of it. And you can sort of fly to the interior of the donut, and there are some docking places. Now, there are only about 20 people here, so this thing is like not that much bigger than the Storm Swept, which can hold about a dozen people. So it's maybe 3 or 4 times the size of the Storm Swept. It's maybe 1,000 feet across, if that. Maybe 600 feet across. So the Storm Swept is going to barely fit through that cut in the outer ring. But I'm going to guess there isn't any. Are there any other ships docked here? I suspect almost certainly not. On the way in, though, before we do that, I want to go back to this background bow. We've reached a new star. This star is called the Nix 1 Alpha. And this is or Nix Theta, sorry. Nix 1 is the planet. Nix Theta is a smoldering red star. Remember that as we find new stars, I'm not going to do this all the time, but this is sort of a star with a precursor vault here. I think something about this map probably has to do, since she's a lore hunter, with precursor vaults. We've got the map on her fragment of the Ophion. I think she's going to pull it out, and she's going to aim the curved, the sort of the concave part, right? The part that's curving. So let's see, it's slightly curved. The part that's the inner part, the scooped out part of the curve, she's going to aim that at the star, and she's going to see, is this the star that shows up the star map? And again, what we're going to do as we go through these boxes is we're going to slowly move up in Ask the Oracle, right? So it's in this box, it's a small chance. Right, in this box, it becomes unlikely that that she's going to find the map with that star. In this box, it'll be 50-50, then likely, then almost certain, so that by the time we get here, we should have found the map. And then, of course, the map is going to take her, God knows where, probably to a bunch of other precursor vaults. That's my guess. But first, we have to find it. So does this, when she aims it, does this light up the map? Oh my gosh, it does. We gain a progress, and Krista immediately gasps. And geez, even if I had given it like a 5% chance, it would have worked, because we rolled a 2. All of a sudden, for the first time, the curved, the sort of the concave surface lights up with red lines and circles and all of this. And she says, oh my gosh, this is it. And Mainframe says, what's it? She says, look, my fragment of the Ophion, the map that's on it, is showing here. Now, so we have found the star chart. We found the star that lights up the star chart. So now she can look at the star chart and see where it leads. So now one of the things I want to do is let's go back to our setting truths and look at this. The iron shard you carry is from the outer hull of an Exodus ship. The navigational chart inscribed on its surface only reveals itself when exposed to the light of a specific star. Where is the map purported to lead, and why are you sworn to follow it? Who seeks to claim the map for themselves? Okay, so one of the things we want to do in our notes is the navigational chart inscribed on its surface only reveals itself when exposed to the light of a specific star, but he's not sure which star it is. And I'm going to say here, we now know that the star which lights up the star chart is Nix Theta in the Kronos Tide sector. And in fact, what I'm going to do is go ahead and, since this is now important, we're going to, gosh guys, I had no idea, I really didn't expect this to light up this fast. So this definitely makes her want to inspect the the uh, the vault here. However, she's going to look at this, and so she's going to take out her data pad, and she's immediately going to take like a screenshot of this map, and then she plugs it into her computer as they're flying toward Elysium, and she blows it up and looks at the star chart, and she says, "Mainframe, do you recognize this?" And he says, "I have no idea where any of these stars are." And he said, "There aren't any names, and you can see there's a path, but you're going to have to figure out where the origin is. I'm not sure which of them is the star we're at now, if any." So Krista says, "Well, I've got my first step, but I'm going to have to figure out which stars are actually on this star chart so I can follow it." So now what we're going to do, and again, I think we're going to use the same kind of rules here, right, is that when we when we come to new stars, we're going to ask, is this one of the stars on the star chart, right? And again, I think at least for the first couple of boxes at this point, because we've now found the star, um, I think, again, for the first box, it'll be small chance. For the second box, it'll be likely. And that will, as we go, it'll lead us. Okay, once we find this, the first star, it'll lead us to the second star and the third star and so on until we finally get to wherever this is leading us. Right. So that's cool. We've added a tick to the background valve. Neat. So they now they arrive at Elysium, and is there room for them to dock? I think it's almost certain. Yeah, there is. Wow, 05. Man, in last session I rolled like 01 3 times. What is with these dice? Okay, so there isn't anybody else docked here. There are no other ships, and they've just got this Mayday signal going over and over and over again. So as they pull in, Jackpot says, Elysium Station, this is Jackpot on the Stormswept. We're here. We picked up your Mayday as we came out of the drift. We would like to help if we can. Please extend the gangway and prepare an airlock for us to come aboard." And let's see. I think so. Elysium has significant structural damage. So what kind of structural damage are we talking about here? Can we get some ideas? Manipulate health. Okay, so their medical bay has been like, there's just a hole out into space, and you can even see gurneys floating out and medical instruments floating out. And Mainframe says, by the terminus, it looks like the entire medbay has been just destroyed. Well, what the heck would have destroyed the medbay? Do you think they brought something on board they shouldn't have from an ice world? Well, Krista says, I'm getting readings of life signs on this world. Quite a few life signs, by the way. She's going to scan the world, and she's also going to get a scan of the vault. But let's see, what planetside features does she notice? She notices shattered plains of pack ice and vibrant auroras on the planet. And I think the vault is in one of the shattered plains of ice. And so now let's take a look at the vault. And we're also going to want to know for vaults, outer first look. So what does it look like from the outside? Dreadful premonitions? She gets dreadful premonitions. Interesting. So as she's scanning the surface and she's looking at this thing. What the heck does it look like? Remote remains. Hmm. Well, it's a large, elaborate machine. It has a practical or functional shape. But what would the function be? Um, so there's a lot of life forms on here. Could this thing be some sort of a machine that is here to defend the organisms on this planet? Is it maybe here, if we look at the planet, sky breaching geysers. Okay, so maybe this thing is actually a mechanical, a moving vault, right? I'm picturing it like, sort of like, almost like a spider on legs and a big central disc shaped platform above the legs. And from underneath the platform, there is sort of like a laser drill, kind of like the first Star Trek movie in 2009 with that J.J. Abrams did, where they were like drilling down into the planet. But this thing is drilling down into the ice. It's an automated thing, so it was built by who knows who. Maybe the Forgotten Ones, since this is an insectoid thing that I'm envisioning, and they are insects. And they left it here to keep things alive, and it's a nice world. So the living things need some warmth and energy, and what it's doing is it's moving across the surface. It's drilling all the way down through all this ice into the mantle, which is allowing like steam and everything to escape. And these huge geysers, bigger than anything Old Faithful ever thought about putting out, spew out into the atmosphere, and living organisms, almost like the hydrothermal vents under the ocean, but this is in the atmosphere. Living organisms that can somehow survive this toxic atmosphere can also survive in these geysers. So they live in this, and the machine moves across the surface, renewing the geysers every so often so that organisms can survive. And we can imagine that these organisms probably undergo like hibernation. So if you think about like in the desert, when it rains, there's all these blooms of life and everything like reproduces like gangbusters, and then it goes dry again maybe for months and everything disappears, right? And then when the rains come again, all the life activates. And in between times, they do something called estivating, right? They form like a shell and hide under the sand and don't do anything. They're like in a cocoon almost. And so I think these things estivate. They cocoon up when it's not when there's no geyser, and then every so often this thing comes in and creates these geysers that are, remember, it's sky breaching, huge geysers that go up miles into the atmosphere, and they're probably a quarter mile across, and everything in that area is able to suddenly, and the temperature heats up, everything melts around it, things come back to life, fish, stuff living in the melted water, insects, all of that kind of thing. They reproduce really quickly. They live for a few weeks, and then the temperature eventually cools back down. The geyser, it refreezes, the geyser goes away. This machine has moved on somewhere else, and it'll come back next season to do this again. Right? So I think that's what this is. And what Krista gets as a dreadful premonition, let's see, what's the dreadful premonition she gets? Well, let's use remote remains. Krista, as she's looking at this thing moving across the surface, she gets a premonition of being attacked by one of the Forgotten Ones and killed, and is lying dead in the ice. That's just like this vision that she gets of herself for just a second, and she goes, and Mainframe says, "What's the matter?" And she says, "I don't know. I just got a weird premonition. I'm kind of like deja vu, but let's." She shakes it off. Let's not worry about that. So I'm going to write here. This is a huge mechanical spider with let's say 8 legs and a massive central disc, and it bores into the ice down to the mantle to create geysers, right, to support the life on the planet. So now, I think that what happened is when these guys didn't know that this thing was there, it was on the other side of the planet or something when they started trying to terraform, and this thing registered it as a threat, because if they melt everything, all the life that's used to surviving in the ice, estivating, and then coming back every time, every geyser season, right? All of that would be destroyed because you'd end up with a world like Earth, right? And then none of those things that were adapted to life on this planet would be able to survive in an Earth-like environment. So it retaliated, and maybe it's able to flip and aim its, ice and mantle and like crust penetrating laser up, and it shot right across and blasted a hole in the medical center and caused catastrophic damage to this thing. And they've sealed it all up, but they're, I think they're in a lot of trouble. Their gravity, artificial gravity isn't working, so they're all sort of floating. And so they say, look, we have life support, but we don't have artificial gravity in here. And I don't know what you're going to do to help us, but whatever you can, please help us. So Krista, they dock the ship, and she says, well, maybe these guys can help us out with an environmental suit. And Mainframe just kind of shrugs, and she says, look, Mainframe, you stay here. Let me take care of this. And Mainframe's like, twist my arm. He says, I'll stay here, and I will make sure that the symbiote doesn't die or anything. And Krista says, you can fly a little bit, right? And he says, yeah. And she says, look, if it seems like this thing is going to start shooting at the storm swept, get us out of here. I'll just take the Stinger ship down to the surface. And he says, okay. So now she's going to go into the station, and she immediately, there's no gravity. And so she floats, she's holding on to handholds on the walls, and she's sort of floating around and she sees a couple of people coming toward her, and they say, are you Jackpot? Are you the one who's helping us? And she says, yes, I just landed. I've got a colleague on board my ship. And she says, what's happening? And so they tell her what happened. There's this thing that's creating these geysers, and apparently it objected to us trying to terraform. It's some kind of a precursor creature. It might even be one of these vaults we've heard about. And so, of course, Krista's curiosity is immediately aroused, and of course she kind of touches her chest, just like above the breastbone, because that's where the Ophion fragment is, and she's thinking, I wonder if I can find something out about this star map if I go down there. So Krista says, okay, who's in charge here? And so the one person steps up. So let's see. Who steps up? Let me roll it up, and I'll bring you guys back, because we're already 23 minutes in. We haven't even made a move. So let me not do this live. I'll stop it, and then I'll bring you back when we've created the character. All right, so we've got Will Blackstone, whose role is investigator. He's chief of security here. He's youthful. I don't know what he's concealing, but he's desperate, and his goal is to pay a debt. Don't know what the debt is all about. We may find that out as we go. So he comes to the front. He says, I'm Will Blackstone. I'm chief of security here on the station, and yeah, we were starting to terraform, and this thing, turned and fired at us, and it hit the med bay, and it killed the chief medical officer and one of the nurses. And there's only 19 of us on this station now. There were 21, and we have massive damage, as you can see. Our gravity is lost, and we're having all kinds of trouble in here. And yeah, we don't know what to do about this, because we don't, our shuttle was also destroyed. And Krista says, well, I could maybe take my ship down onto the surface, or I have a fighter docked in my ship that I could take down. And he says, oh, well, that'd be great, but, Do you have an environmental suit? And you better have a pretty resistant one. That's a toxic atmosphere, and it's really cold down there. Plus, that thing might have defenses. And Kritza says, well, it turns out my environmental suit was lost. Do you guys, have anything that you could maybe give to us? Now, so wait, before that, she says, my environmental suits are lost, but I'd be willing to try something if you guys can help me out. She says, so let's see, let's try to make a connection with this guy, right? So we're searching out a new relationship. She says, can you give me some more details about what happened first? And let's see, let's make a connection with him. We're going to roll heart. And we get a weak hit. It comes with a complication or a cost. So let's go and set up our connection, and I'll bring you right back. All right, so here's Will Blackstone, and his role is investigator. So she gets +1. And +1 momentum, and so on and so forth. So that's his role. If she needs to investigate things, and he helps her out. So what she's going to say is, well, I'll tell you what. And she pulls out her fragment of the Ophion, and he looks at it and he says, is that what I think it is? She says, yes, this is from the Exodus ship Ophion. And she covers up the fact that it is now glowing with this star map because she's in the presence of this star still. She covers that up and she holds it in her hand. And she says, I'm going to swear on this fragment, and his eyes widen as he realizes what she's doing, that I will shut down. So does she want to shut it down? Yes. Well, no, we don't want to destroy it, right? It's attacking them. So she says, I swear on this that I will find a way to get this machine to stop attacking you. Whether I have to shut it down or whatever, I'll get it to stop attacking you. So we're going to set up a vow, and I'll bring you back when we have that set up. But first, let's swear the Iron Vow. So she's swearing to do this. How's that going to work? We're swearing it to a connection, +1. Keep our fingers crossed. And we get a weak hit. Take +1 momentum. And we have more questions than we have answers. What are we going to do to find a way forward? Well, we need to go down there. So we swore an Iron Vow to him, so that gives us progress. And she says, I'm going to need, so now I'm not going to make a move for this because this is going to be spending experience. She says, I'm going to need some kind of a suit to help me out down there. And he says, well, look, we need our environmental suits up here because even though we have life support now, we might not have it soon. And I don't know what's going to happen if this thing keeps shooting at us. It's fired at us like every hour. And he looks at his chronometer and he says, another half hour or so, it's going to fire again. And so this means we might need a track, a clock. But before we do that, he says, but I do have something you might be able to use. And he says, none of us are actually trained in it. The sector authority gave it to us, and they were supposed to send us somebody who could do explorations in this thing, but none of us are trained in it, and you might want it. And what we're going to do is we're going to get for her an exosuit. So this is a vehicle, right? So the exosuit is a support vehicle, and this allows her, it's a lumbering rig. This is a giant, almost like a mech, right? It's this big lumbering rig where it houses one pilot, sealed against hostile environments. It's armed with fixed and held weapons. So with fixed weapons. So it's got like a blade, maybe like a vibro blade on one hand, and some kind of a particle cannon on the other. And let's name it. What is this called? Let me think about that, and I'll bring you back. All right, so I decided to call it the Titan Mark II. Since we're doing a lot of stuff with Titans, this is a Titan suit. He says, we have a Titan Mark II. You can use it if you want. So we're going to spend her experience points to get this new asset. And so she now has a powered exosuit. So this thing is basically if you can think of like the Iron Man suit. I keep making movie references from Iron Man, not Iron Man's costume, but like what Jeff Bridges was using at the end of the movie, where he's in it, like she's in it, but like her feet would be like at the top of the like hips or thighs, right? And her hands would be like where its shoulders are, right? So its arms and legs are like mechanical, and she's sort of sitting in the torso. And then it has this big sort of dome helmet, and she's sort of, you can see her head and shoulders are in there. So she's going to take this thing and get in it and walk it back to the storm swept. And unfortunately, I think we're going to have to use the storm swept to go down there. And we have to hope we don't get shot at by this thing. Um, so she comes in and like she opens up, she gets it, like manages to get it barely through the airlock, and like leaves it in the cargo bay, and then she climbs out of it, and Mainframe comes running in. What is that noise? Holy Terminus, what is that? And she says, this is a Titan. He said, Titan? Looks like a Mark II. Where did you get that? She said, well, they had it on the space station, and since I agreed, and she shows him the fragment of the Ophion, I agreed to go down there and deal with this walking precursor machine or vault or whatever it is. They said I could have it. Now, the cool thing, guys, about this suit is she can do atmospheric drops, I think. Thrust assisted leaps, drop to a surface from altitude, right? So that's something she can do later, and I really like this idea because then she can just go out the airlock in this suit, leave the storm swept in orbit, and go right down. Now, I don't know how she's going to get back up because they don't have transporter beams, but so the nice thing about this is if we end up in combat, right, and you do a forceful damaging or resistant move, you can, after rolling, replace the value of our action die with the rig's integrity. It costs momentum, but it doesn't hurt the rig, which is really nice. And this thing has a lot of integrity. So this is going to give her some real combat capabilities on planet surfaces and stuff, but not in settlements, right? Because she wouldn't bring this in a settlement. So we now have another really cool asset. So she says, look, I think we have to take the storm swept down there, and we don't have a lot of time. So what we're going to do here is let me write out the vow, and then I'll bring you back. All right, so we have multiple things to do here because we have this vow, which I decided to make a dangerous vow because I can think of 5 steps, 2 ticks per step, right? But then we're going to have to undertake a journey to get through this thing, and I think it's going to probably need to be a formidable journey because this is a large object. So first we have to get to the surface safely, right? So that she can get to the vault. And then once she's on the surface, she's going to get in her exosuit and try to get into this thing. So she gets into the storm swept, and it's probably going to be a long episode because we've done so few moves. This is all set up, and I would like to do some more moves before we get down there. So she's going to get into the storm swept and fly down to the surface. And so should she leave mainframe? Now, I don't think she should leave mainframe on the station because if it gets attacked again, he'll get killed. So she says, look, you just stay in the ship when we get down there because I've got the exosuit. So they fly down, and she's going to face danger. And I think that this thing could potentially have some smaller weapons that it might shoot at them. So she's going to fly down, and so are we, let's see, are we trying to be stealthy? No, I think she's using expertise here. She is trying to pilot through the wind and the geysers and get to a reasonable landing site that gets her close enough to this thing that she can get into the vault. So let's face danger. And we're facing danger with wits. And we get a strong hit. We take +1 momentum, and we land on the surface. So the storm swept comes through this atmosphere, and she sees the geyser spewing up because it's just created. It's in the middle of creating another one, and as soon as it finishes, it's going to rotate up and fire that same laser at the space station up in orbit, and then it'll walk a little more and then make the next geyser. So Krista's got, I don't know, an hour or something. What I say, half hour? Let's say an hour is a little bit better, a little more realistic, to get in there and disable it somehow. Now, the issue here is if she completely disables it, everything on here is going to die, right? It'll estivate, but then if it doesn't continue the quote unquote seasonal walking around and geysering, the life here is just going to die. So she doesn't want to necessarily destroy all the life on the planet. I'm not sure how much she realizes what's going on, though. Right now, what she wants to do is try and either disable this thing or get it to stop shooting at the space station. So we have landed successfully on the surface. So that is our first tick. Next, she says, okay, you stay here. If anything bad happens, get out of here. Don't let the storm swept be destroyed. And he says, okay, like if this thing comes after us. So she's going to go back down to the cargo hold, and she's going to climb into the exosuit, and she's going to shut the cargo hold, right? Close it from the rest of the ship. There is a way where you can open it. Open it. That lets all the air of the cargo hold out, but the rest of the ship is sealed. She's going to head out of it, and then she radios back to mainframe and says, all right, close the cargo hold and repressurize. And he says, okay, be careful out there. So now she's going to head to the vault. So let me set up a vault, and I'll bring you back. All right, so we are back. We're going to be undertaking expeditions, and we're going to be using wits and stuff. So I do think we're going to bring Iris with us. So Iris is sort of following along behind this, like, I don't know, what would it be? Maybe 10-foot high exosuit that Krista's lumbering around in. And so the first thing we have to do is figure out how to get into this thing. So I think that's going to be the first undertaken expedition. It's standing still, and it's shooting its beam down into the mantle, like down through the ice. Krista is going to use the exosuit to kind of climb her way up one of the legs, and Iris is going to float up ahead of her. And then she's going to go, so the leg is going up vertically and then horizontally into the disc. And so she goes up into the, like across the horizontal way, and she's looking for a way to get in. So now we're going to undertake our first journey. So we're starting here. And this is the top of the leg, right? So this is where she's starting. And if she can get through this, then she will get her inside. There will be some hatch or something. So we're starting here. I'm not going to bring the robot's icon on here because it's with her. We don't really need to keep it there. Hopefully, I'll remember to use it. All right. So we are. So before we do that, Krista is going to use the scanners built into this exosuit. She's got her. So what she's did, there's a little module where she could stick her data pad into it, and she can fiddle with it as one of the controls in the exosuit, along with the two, like, you can imagine these two like joysticks that she's got, one in each hand, and like buttons on the sides, and there's a control panel, and the data pad is right there, and she's going to scan it to see if she can figure out if there's any like way inside. And so we're going to secure an advantage with the scanner. So this is with expertise. And so we're rolling wits, and we get a strong hit. We get 2 plus 2 momentum, and we add +1 on our next move. So she sees what looks like an entryway. There's some sort of a hatch, or maybe it is the legs attach, and there are these little holes, and that lets you inside. So she says, I think I can fit in there. Iris, go that way. And Iris turns on her little flashlights and flies ahead. And Krista walks across the top of the leg because it's not moving, right? It's stationary. And she's going to go inside the space above the leg that where it articulates to try and get inside this vault. So now we're going to undertake our first expedition, right? So let me set that up. All right, we are back and we're exploring the Nyx Vault. So we're going to undertake an expedition, and we get +1 from Iris, right? And we get +1 from our secured advantage. So we get +2 on this roll, and we have 9 momentum. So hopefully this will be pretty good. She's going to attempt to get through the space between the leg and the top of the arch where the leg articulates with the outer wall of this vault and try to get inside. And we get a weak hit, which you could burn to make a strong hit. I think we're gonna leave it the weak hit, and we'll face a peril on the inside. So let me set this up. So we get inside, and this will be our inner first look. And so so let's see, what do we find, right? So I set this up as it's mechanical, vault, or descriptor and focus. So when we get inside, what do we see? Roll. I'm hitting the wrong button. We're doing vault feature. So we see inner first look. Surfaces respond to the touch. Okay, so when she gets inside, and there are all of these panels along the wall, along the floor. So it's made out of metal, square plates, or let's say hexagonal plates, since we've got a hex map here. Hexagonal plates that all fit together, much like this map. And each time she steps on one, it lights up. So this thing probably knows she's here, but each time she steps it, if she touches the wall, which also is made of these hexagonal plates, they light up. And so now we're going to look at the vault feature. And looted or empty containers. So this is a cargo hold. So this is a cargo hold. And when she looks in the containers, they are looted or empty. But there's a peril here, right? We face a peril at the waypoint. And we do, by the way, we do mark progress, right? So let's go ahead and mark our progress. And what's the peril? Dire warning left by other explorers. Okay, so this is empty, but she also sees what? A skeleton of someone who was in here before, a human skeleton. And on the wall, written in blood, is the word beware, B-E-W-A, part of an R, and then it trails off because the guy died. So he was writing beware, and then he passed away. He didn't make it. So Krista kind of shudders, and she says that seems kind of scary. But okay, this is just a cargo hold. We need to move on. So she says, Iris, lead the way. Let's go that way. There's 2 hallways out of here. She says, let's try going that way, because I think that's going to lead toward the front of this creature, if it has a front. So again, Iris gives us +1, and we undertake our next expedition. We're not going to be able to do this whole thing in this episode, I think, guys, but I would like to do a little bit because we haven't done that many moves. So we're rolling at +1 wits. And we get, oh boy, a miss, or we can do a weak hit. Let's burn the momentum and get a weak hit. So let's go this way. And we'll create another room. Doesn't really matter whether it's circle or square. So we're going to face a peril, I think, at this waypoint. So let's see. We're going to look at what kind of feature is it. Oh, and I really should roll the perils for the Oracle Array. So it's a vault feature, and we end up with echoing noises. So this is, I'll just call this a corridor. Right? So this is some sort of a corridor, and there are echoing noises. So maybe she's hearing the noises of it maybe getting ready to start moving again or something like that. And now for the peril, what I really should be doing is rolling this. What kind of peril do we have? Oh, wait, this is be 1d8. A vault peril. So this is the interior vault peril. And we get an important gear malfunctions. Okay, so let's mark progress for this. I think a gear on the exosuit malfunctions. And Krista starts cursing, and let's see, what's malfunctioning? I don't know. Let's try descriptor focus. Moving force. Okay, so one of the arm gears has malfunctioned, and although it can still walk and move, she won't be able to use the strength of the exosuit to pick up something heavy and carry it. She also won't be able to use, let me rule this as well. She won't be able to use this feature for melee damage, right? If she's making like a melee strike, because the arm is weakened and it's the arm with the vibroblade, right? So she's just going to have to use her own armor or something, her own iron or something. So I think that's the penalty, is she won't be able to use this she won't be able to use this feature of rolling integrity in melee combat. She can still strike using her iron, but she can't use this where she gets to like replace the die. She won't be able to do that with the vibroblade. With the gun she still can, because it doesn't cost any strength to fire the gun. Blast it. Did these guys just give me this exosuit because it's falling apart? She curses. But she doesn't have time to try and repair it now. And she can't really get out of it because she doesn't have a regular environmental suit at this point. All right, I think we'll go a little bit further. So she says, Iris, help me out here. Go ahead. Let's see what's next. And we're going to undertake an expedition again, rolling with the help of Iris. So we get +1. And she's staying vigilant. She's not rushing. Now, so far we haven't had any misses, so we haven't had to advance this clock. What do we get? Of course, I had to say it. Miss. She's waylaid by a crisis or arrives at a waypoint to confront immediate hardship. So, this is going to be, I guess, a vault peril, or one of the perils. Let's see. This is going to be a vault peril. So she heads to the end of the corridor, and there's a sudden change in the environment. So we have to think about what that is. But this is taking too long, she says, and we lose a tick, right? So what's going to be the change in the atmosphere? Control action and theme and see what it says. Threaten power. Okay. Okay, so I think she comes to the edge of the corridor. All of these hexagons are lighting up. And all of a sudden, I think there's a defense mechanism here. And the one of the plates that she steps on, all of a sudden, she starts getting alarms. And it's draining, this particular plate is like a trap, and it's draining power out of her exosuit. And she starts cursing, and she's going to have to face danger. So I think she's going to use speed and try to get the thing, like, quickly move the joysticks really fast and try to jump this thing off of the hex into the next hex, which hopefully won't be draining power, so that it doesn't drain power from the exosuit. And if we fail this, then the exosuit's going to take some integrity damage. And so this is Edge. And we get an opportunity, a strong hit. We get +1 momentum, and we get an opportunity. So she jumps off of it, and we get an opportunity. And so what opportunity do we get? We get a shortcut or a less perilous path. So she jumps and jumps forward and unwittingly crashes right through. Well, she crashed through a door. She jumps forward, and I think the exosuit just smashes through a wall, and she ends up in the next section, whatever that's going to be, or she can go to the next section anyway. So that's a less perilous path, but it doesn't really give us any bonuses. So what I'm going to do, actually, because it's a less perilous path, is I'm going to make a GM call here and say she gets an extra +1 to her next move. It doesn't say you get to do that, but because it's an opportunity, I think it's a shortcut, so she's going to get an extra +1. So let's do another Undertake a Journey. I think this will be the last one. Undertake an Expedition. And we're going to roll with 2 bonuses. One from Iris, floats ahead of us and helping us because Iris wasn't drained of energy. And +1 for this opportunity that we got, the shortcut. And so we get +2. And we get, oh boy, a miss. So even though she got a shortcut, there's something bad here. So I think what I'm going to do, so we got to figure out what this is. So what I'm going to say is, because it's a shortcut, I'm not going to charge the clock. We're going to pay a regular price. And we'll see what that is. But first, let me envision what we're seeing here. This isn't a waypoint, but we've got to figure out what area this is. So let's see. What feature do we find? We're going to do a vault feature. And we find remains of intruders. Okay, so I don't know what kind of room this is. Let's call it another cargo hold, I guess, or let's call it I just call it a large room. I don't know what was here, but there's a bunch of dead bodies here now. So large room with corpses. So this must be companions of the guy in the cargo hold, and they're all dead. And I think if they're all dead, there must be an enemy here, right? If we look at pay the price, you encounter signs of a looming threat. You face a tough choice. You face consequences of an earlier action. A new enemy is revealed. So is it a new enemy, or are we encountering signs of a looming threat? Well, we've got corpses. So I guess that's the more likely. The signs of the looming threat, is that it? Do we see like signs of what killed them? I think it's likely there's going to be an enemy in here. Is there an enemy in here? No. So we see signs of a looming threat. So yeah, we've got a bunch of dead bodies, and they were killed by some kind of violent weaponry. They're corpses. They're mostly bones, but their bones are shattered and broken. Something big and powerful damaged them. So we're here. We've only done 2 ticks, even though we've got 3 rooms, because this was just what's the next feature. So we'll have to undertake the expedition in the next session to keep going. Things are looking okay. Some time has gone by, but like I feel like So I feel like with this, each tick is like 10 minutes, and when we get to the end, an hour has gone by, and then it's going to just turn and shoot the space station, and we've failed. Um, so let's see. We did enter the vault, and we got to the surface. So these are done. So we have 2 ticks done, but now we got to find the vault core and see if we can shut it down. All right, guys, we'll leave it there. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Starforged Alpha Cluster.